So obviously for the podcast, this is sort of a bit of a Premier League special. We've got a guest on. I think the first time we've actually had a proper, like a non-Sunderland fan guest on, who he had the misfortune of having me on his podcast called the Kop Table podcast. He's called Peter Phillips. So how are you doing, Peter? You all right? Well, at least I don't know if you're still on there, but I would assume you might be. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very well. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thanks for coming.
Cheers.
Brilliant. And Ben's back. You all right?
Yeah, not too bad.
Have you recovered from your little moan the other day that we did?
Yeah, having the weekend off from Sunderland's made it all the better, I think.
Oh, it is, until we lose 3-0 to Sheffield United this week, but we won't talk about that. This is more of the Premier League ones. Right. We're sort of a little pressed for time, so we'll get straight into it. So, obviously, I've said Peter is a Liverpool fan. I was on the Kop Table podcast, I think, last season, Peter. If I remember rightly, it was before you came up here, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just before the game, just before Christmas, I think it was, wasn't it?
Was it just, I think it was just before or after Christmas, I can't remember. Yeah. But, we got a 2-2 draw, I think, and Defoe scored 2 penalties, and it's amazing and from a Sunderland fan's perspective, that feels like a lifetime away now, given what's happened since. But this is primarily not about Sunderland, so the first section of this is going to be about Liverpool specifically. So obviously, Peter, I'd like to ask first of all what your perspective is on your transfers. Obviously the transfer I'm looking at the Sky Sports page about your transfers, but you'll be able to tell more than me. All it really says on here is that you've signed Oxlade-Chamberlain, Andrew Robertson, Mohamed Salah, and Dominic Solanke. But correct me if I'm wrong, but have you done more business than that? Because Sky Sports is pretty restricted in what it puts out.
No, that's pretty much it. Yeah, signed a left back, Andrew Robertson from Hull. We signed Solanke from Chelsea, which is going to go to a tribunal. We brought Mohamed Salah in quite early on in the window from Roma, and we let a couple of players go as well. Obviously, Lucas left early, and then coming up to the final days of the transfer window, Origi left and Sacco went to Crystal Palace. So I think we've got one more player extra in the squad from last season. But to be honest with you, I thought they would have done a lot more business than what we actually have done. We've still got the core 11, 12, 13 players in the squad that's good enough to get into any Premier League team, really. But then you're looking after that onto the bench, and you've got a lot of young players, the likes of Alexander-Arnold, Ben Woodburn, Ejaria, players like that. And I think it was a bit disappointing towards the end of the transfer window when we didn't sign Virgil van Dijk, and we was linked with Thomas Lemar. The Van Dijk one was the biggest disappointment, I think, to all Liverpool fans. Obviously, they had to do the apology early on in the window when he was accused of going behind the backs of Southampton and tapping up Van Dijk. So they put the apology out and said they would remain not interested, if you like, unless Southampton came back in and said to Liverpool, you're prepared to listen to a bid for him. So that was just one big mess, really, with the Van Dijk situation. Lamar, towards the end of the window, got the fans excited and thought that we was going to bring in that other forward-thinking player, but that failed to materialise as well. So we ended up just signing Oxlade-Chamberlain on the last day of the season. You would think will be a good signing. He's still only 23, 24 years of age. Still got plenty of football left in him. He can only get better, really, under Klopp, in my opinion. But it's where he fits into the Liverpool team. Obviously, he's been playing out wide for Arsenal and things like that. But I think he's been promised a sort of more of a central role at Liverpool. So he's going to have to get past the likes of Wijnaldum, Chan, Henderson, Lallana when he's fit. So there's competition for places in that area of the squad. It's just the defensive side of things for me where we really needed to strengthen. Obviously, like I mentioned, Van Dijk. We've got Klavan, we've got Lovren, Joe Matip, and basically Joe Gomez. So they're like 4 centre-halves. If we had Lucas as a fifth cover last year, so if any injuries or suspensions happen in that part of the team, then we're going to be struggling slightly, which is why I was very surprised that Klopp didn't bring in that centre-back that's much needed for me.
I don't blame you. And that was the one thing when you mentioned a few points there I was going to build upon. I'll start with the first one. Obviously, one of the biggest sagas of the whole summer which to be honest I was getting fairly bored of by the end, but it was the Van Dijk thing. I felt for certain after, I think it was like a few weeks into the transfer window, I think he expressed an outward interest in joining Liverpool, and I felt like that signing I think would have been a huge one for you, because I think going forward you're probably the best looking team, or certainly at least one of the top 3 best looking teams in the Premier League. But as far as, you saw I'm sure you won't want me to remind you, but the 3rd goal at Watford in stoppage time, for example, is a big reason why I don't think yous will, win major honours like, the Champions League or the Premier League, because I think if you sort the defence out, I think you're pretty much fine. But I think Van Dijk, obviously you've mentioned how big a disappointment it was to miss out on him, but what happened? Did we just constantly pursuing him, and then Southampton, and then just eventually never materialised anywhere? Did Southampton basically just say, no, we're not selling him to you, or anything like that?
Well, there's a lot of things that's gone on behind the scenes, apparently. Then it wasn't just Liverpool that talked to Van Dijk. Chelsea and Manchester City also spoke to him. Apparently, from what I'm told, is Southampton sort of agreed that Liverpool could speak to him. But then once it came out in the press, it was you can speak to him, but we don't want it going out. But then someone from Liverpool's made it public into the national press that Van Dijk has chosen Liverpool. I think Liverpool sort of panicked, didn't want to get into a bidding war with Chelsea and Manchester City, so they put it out there straight away that Van Dijk was only interested in joining Liverpool, which got Southampton's back up and put Liverpool in a position where Southampton have come out and said, we're not happy with this. Liverpool have had to apologise. So, like I say, it was one big mess, really. Van Dijk obviously put out a statement, didn't he, to say that he wanted to transfer, he wanted to leave. He's not been he's not trained with the first team squad since it happened. So, I think he's been also hung out to dry a little bit by Liverpool. He might not be happy with the situation himself. He's now got to go and play for Southampton if that's what he chooses to do, or sit out. He's still got to go back to that club on a daily basis until either he moves in January or he moves next summer. So it's a whole big mess, really, Michael.
Fair enough. What was the fee being talked about? Was it 70 million?
He was talking. Yeah, there's talking of 70+ million pounds. I think Southampton were. When you look at it, Southampton is silly not to sell him, really, because they've got similar situation with us and Coutinho. They've got a player who's expressed the decision that they wanted to leave. They don't want to play for that team. So, in my opinion, when that happens and you have a player that comes and says, look, I don't want to play for you anymore, then what's the point in keeping him? You may as well just get as much money as you can for him and move on and try and replace him with a player as best you can. Obviously, Coutinho's out in Brazil at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see what happens after his game and whether he comes straight back on that plane or he sits it out in Brazil for a little bit, as we've seen in the past with the likes of Diego Costa, Carlos Tevez, who had a little stint playing golf in South America while City was still paying his wages. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes back. But yeah, I don't think it's finished with Van Dijk. I still think that Liverpool will eventually sign him, but there's a lot of water gone under that bridge, so it's going to be interesting to see if they go back in for him in January or they wait till next summer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that that's definitely not the last of the transfer, and I agree that eventually Hughes will, even if Hughes don't sign him, eventually he will leave Southampton. And like you said, I think if you have a player that doesn't want to be there, it can create an unharmonious dressing room. And it depends which way Southampton manage it. It depends if they say to Van Dijk, okay, you want to leave, go and prove why you're good enough for the next few months. You're away in January, go and prove why you're good enough to go and play for the elite teams. On the flip side, you obviously mentioned Philippe Coutinho, and I was going to ask you about that. I wanted to get both of your guys' opinions on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, and obviously Barcelona sold Neymar for probably, is it like the all-time record transfer now, whether it's paid in installments or however the deal is. I think it totals around 200 million. So correct me if I'm wrong, either you two or in the comments below. But I think it's been made no secret then, from what I remember, Peter, that they wanted Coutinho as his replacement. So didn't you reject bids of something like 115 million? I know it was definitely the 100 million mark, but apparently you have rejected those bids. I just wanted to know what you thought about the whole Coutinho saga that's gone on this summer.
Yeah, once again, another bit of a messy situation. Coutinho, earlier on in the transfer window, was linked with Barcelona. They put a bid in of around, I think it was about 75, 80 million pounds first off. Liverpool rejected the bid straight off, put a statement out. FSG, the owners, said basically Philip Coutinho was not for sale in this transfer window, and that's the end of the matter. And to be fair to them, they stuck to the guns. Barcelona came back again with another bid of around 85 million. And then towards the end of the window, they came back with another bid of around 113, 114 million, but with add-ons, which is on the never, basically, of winning multiple trophies, winning the Ballon d'Or, all sorts of clauses that would have added up to about 130 million. But Liverpool said from day one that he wasn't for sale. Him and his agent's been in with the club many times talking. He's been trying to get the move to Barcelona. Obviously, he's a South American lad, and it's the pinnacle for them type of lads, isn't it? They see Barcelona, Real Madrid as the place to play their football, and Liverpool's now denied them that opportunity. So, like they did with Luis Suarez a couple of seasons back when they made him sit it out for another season. So hopefully, Coutinho will come back in. He'll have to get his head down, like you said about Van Dijk, for 12 months, and then see where it's at next summer. I think that was the plan originally when he signed his 5-year contract only back in January with no clause in. Apparently the agreement was nothing official, but just a spoken agreement was that in a couple of seasons we'll have a look. If Barcelona come in then we'll assess the situation, but you've got to give us at least 18 months before that goes down the line. It was only 6 months after that contract was signed when Barcelona have come in for him. So Liverpool have basically turned around and said to Coutinho, he's got to sit it out for the next 12, 18 months, and we'll revisit that situation. So I'm pleased that he stayed, but like I said before, should we have sold him and moved on to another player? I think possibly, we should have done. We've done well without him up to now, so who's to say that we can't continue to do well without him not being there on a permanent basis? I don't know what Ben's thoughts on it are.
Yeah, go on, Ben.
Yeah, as a Liverpool fan, I would be very pleased that you've kept hold of him, because he was the difference between getting into the Champions League last year and finishing outside the top four. But it's been an interesting start to the season for Liverpool, because they've looked pretty solid going forward. I'm sure Peter saw in the 3 games that they've played that they probably haven't missed Coutinho. No. Am I right, Peter?
They've played really well. Obviously, created lots of chances against Palace, and they absolutely battered Arsenal. They played well against Hoffenheim in both legs. So, to be honest, he hasn't really been missed as of yet. But obviously, we've got City coming up at the weekend, and he's a player that you want in your team when you're playing against the likes of Manchester City, isn't he?
Yeah, that will be the acid test, I think, for Liverpool going forward.
Yeah, it definitely will be. Especially, I think it depends how they can. I mean, they come to me. I was watching the Arsenal game, I think, over a week ago, and I remember watching it and thinking that before you scored, I thought that there was only going to really be one winner, because I thought Liverpool, and this is probably under the effect of Klopp, as how good a manager he is. It's basically high pressing, high tempo, constantly forcing the opposition into mistakes, being sharper, faster, quicker at every ball, wanting it more. And I thought that when I looked at it, I thought, blimey, these look a good team here. Now, I thought if they could sort out the defence out, they'd be fine. But the one other question I wanted to ask, and it's a question that's just brought through to me. I'm quickly looking on the Sky Sports page, and obviously I've just got to point something funny out here. It says on here, now they'll probably change it by the time you see this, but it says Mohamed Salah transferred from Roma to Liverpool for £34. It doesn't say 34 million or anything, so that's probably going to be bargain of the century if that's the case. But what I wanted to ask on the subject of Salah and Chamberlain, and this only just occurred to me, so tell me if I'm talking crap here. Do you think that Salah, Chamberlain and particularly Salah, was signed with one eye on the fact that Coutinho could leave?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was potentially the idea behind signing Mohamed Salah, but obviously with the Origi going as well. But Salah's been a very good signing. He's proved he's got the pace. He's got Premier League experience, hasn't he? So I think one eye was probably looking towards the situation with Philip Coutinho, but it's Salah's a very good signing for me, and now we've got older Coutinho as well. The pair of them should hit it off like they did in the pre-season before all this trouble started. So fingers crossed he'll come back into the fold. He'll get his head down for 12 months, knuckle down, and hopefully win a trophy with us before he leaves for Barcelona next summer, which I do expect to happen.
Fair enough. Right, well, what I will quickly say then on the subject of your transfer, there's two little bits I want to talk about before we talk about the Premier League. I want to talk about, first of all, our thoughts on Andrew Robertson coming in and Lucas Leiva going out, because I've seen a few fans be devastated, a couple of our fans be devastated that he's left. So feel free to start on whichever one you want.
Yeah, Lucas Leiva, he done 10 years at Liverpool. He started off his career very, very slowly, and he was basically a yellow card waiting to happen in most games. For me, he's a solid player. He does a job for you, but other than that, he doesn't give you that much going forward. Like I say, he'll give you a 7 out of 10 performance week in, week out, and the lad, his heart's totally in it. Know what I mean? He's like an adopted Scouser, so everyone's sad to see him go, but for the personal reasons. But also he was like a father figure to all the Brazilian and the South American lads who come over. He'd take them under the wing and show them around Liverpool and things like that, and make them settle into the country, which is difficult to do for lads coming over and from playing in different countries. So in that aspect, we're gonna miss a lot of the off the field stuff with Lucas, but on the field, I'd say we were not gonna miss him a hell of a lot because he doesn't offer as much as what other players who are in the squad at the moment do, like Chan, Wijnaldum. They're all better football players than Lucas Leiva, but off the field, they're going to really miss his input because he is a cracking lad as well. So it's just one of them things. But Andrew Robertson coming in from Hull looks like a good signing. Scored a cracking goal for Scotland the other day. His debut against Crystal Palace was very, very good. Everything that Liverpool created that day came down the left-hand side from Robertson, put in a couple of great balls. Well, more than a couple. He put in about 5 or 6 great balls into the box. Had a couple of chances as well. He's just been slowly put it. That's the only game he's played really. So he's just been perhaps sort of easing him into the team and getting a bit of training behind him and things like that. So I think he's going to turn out to be a very good signing. And for 10 million, you can't really argue that you don't get many international players for that price these days, do you? You're talking a minimum 25, 30 million pound start for just average players. So you think he's only 21 years of age, hell of a lot of potential, and that's a position we've really struggled in for the past 10 years or something like that. We haven't had a solid left back since John Arne Riise or anyone like that. We've played Milner there last season, who's a centre midfield player. Moreno struggled. So for me, Andrew Robertson is a very, very shrewd signing, and hopefully he'll go on to have a very good career with Liverpool.
Fingers crossed for that. I'll tell you what you were saying about the struggling with the left back position, Ben. Which club does this sound like? Struggling with the left back position.
It's an all too familiar thought, isn't it?
I know. Well, we've had to watch Brendan Galloway. We've had to watch Andre Desena. I don't want to disrespect him in front of Peter here, but Andre Desena, even though he was much older then, by God, he was horrendous when we signed him. Right, we'll move on because we've got a bit of time restraints here. But I wanted to ask you too, and we'll just try and keep it condensed if we can. Which team in particular? Is there any particular signing or any particular team that's made outstanding transfer business for you in this particular window that will have an impact on the coming season more so than anything else?
Yeah, go on, Ben. You go first.
Yeah, I think Manchester United. I think they have got to be looked at getting Lukaku up front, goal scorer. Was he the top goal scorer in the Premier League last season? I think he was.
I can't remember. I think he was definitely up there, though. He was probably in the top 3.
Was up there with him. So you've got to expect Manchester United to be right up there. And obviously, City, with all the money that they've got, signings, Bernardo Silva, that's a great signing. They're signing elite players. Well, this is where I really struggle to think Liverpool will win the league because they haven't signed any elite players this year. I don't know if you'll agree with that, Peter. Maybe Van Dijk would have been the elite player
We've got to remember they
Yeah,
might still get him in January. They might still get him in
Yeah.
January, but I know what you mean. As of right now, I think. So, I mean, sorry, Pete. I don't think you might want us praising Man United too much, but I think the signing of Matic, I think, is another big one as well. Because I think he will do the ugly side of it in midfield. I think every team needs a player like that, who's going to do the job, like similar to what you mentioned, what Lever did, but obviously Matic is like on a bigger scale than Lever. Is that he reads the game well, passes the ball round, and will get things going. For me, it's Manchester United. I think they've done the best business. Man City obviously have spent a lot of money on fullbacks. Tottenham, I think, have done quite well actually to replace Kyle Walker. Was it that's Serge Aurier? Now, I know I've probably butchered that name, so I'm sorry. But for half the price they sold Walker for. But I mean, go on, Peter. What would you think? Is there anyone in particular that you think has stood out to you in the transfer market?
Yeah, there's a few clubs and a few players, like you say. That was my initial thoughts as well. I know I'm a Liverpool fan, but obviously Manchester United's business has been very, very good. They've brought in Lukaku, and for me, Matic is probably the one that I was very surprised about as well. Why would Chelsea let a player of his calibre join basically a rival of theirs and strengthen the squad of Manchester United? And they've struggled in that position, haven't they, United, for a few seasons now. Obviously, Carrick's a little bit older, and Herrera's not a big lad. He does a job for them, but the likes of Matic now in that centre midfield, he's about 6'2", isn't he? He's big, something like strong. A lot of Premier League experience. He's only about 27, 28. So for Manchester United to get him from Chelsea was a very, very good piece of business in my opinion. Like you say, they've done the business early as well with Lindelof, the centre half. Lukaku come in as the striker, so they strengthened the spine of their team, haven't they? Really. Looking other than Manchester United, like you said, Manchester City's brought in a lot of players who will do well, like Bernardo Silva, Kyle Walker, and Danilo, the centre backs, and the keeper as well. He brought in for about 40 million. He's very good. He's on the floor. I'm not too sure about his goalkeeping. I've not seen that much of him, but I know he's very good on the deck, which Premier League goalkeepers need to be these days, only because they're basically a sweeper at times. One player who's probably not been mentioned a hell of a lot is the guy who signed for West Bromwich Albion, the Krakowiak is his name, centre midfield player who they brought in from Paris Saint-Germain. I think that's going to be a very, very good signing for West Brom. There's a lot of teams who could have done with a player like him. Even Liverpool, that's a player in the centre midfielder. Just one player who we haven't mentioned is Naby Keita, who Liverpool have brought in for, but it's only going to be for next summer. But
I saw that.
Yeah, they put a deposit down on him now, so the guarantees basically he's coming in 2018 summer. Possibly a few whispers going around the last couple of days that if Leipzig go out to the Champions League early on and they've not got much to play for, there's a possibility he could come in January if Liverpool are prepared to pay a little bit more money. So that will be one to keep an eye on. Obviously Everton as well, they've brought in a lot of players. They've brought in Pickford, Gylfi Sigurdsson and Klaassen. They also brought in our friend Wayne Rooney, didn't he? From Manchester United, who's having a few little off the field problems.
Yeah, the Merseyside derby will be interesting there, won't it?
Yeah, definitely. And they brought in Sandro as well, who from Spain for a cheap price of about $5 million. Apparently, he's very highly rated, and he's another one to keep an eye on. But one team that surprised me, I thought might have done better than what they have done, is West Ham. They brought in Arnautovic, Hernandez, brought in a couple of more players we're not too sure of off the top of my head. But I'm surprised at their start. I don't think they've won a game yet, have they?
No, they haven't. They haven't got a point on the board, I don't think.
And they got battered away at United, and it's not. I think Arnautovic got sent off, didn't he, in his last game? So that's I'm surprised. That's surprised me. But another good signing for me is Sam Lucas for Swansea, who's come down from Hull. Seeing him in his making his debut the other game, I think it was the last game he played, and he looked very assured. He looked like similar to Matic, left-footed centre midfield player, big lad, but obviously a bit younger than Matic. But he was assured. He swept up everything in front of that back four, put in a very good debut, and he's another signing who I think will be very good for Swansea City.
Right. Well, I think the transfers just have gone absolutely all over the place. I mean, I agree with what your point about West Ham. I think eventually they'll be fine, but I think it's probably going to be at the expense of Bilic. I think obviously Everton, the sign we haven't mentioned there is Michael Keane. I think that's going to be a very, very good signing for them. But anyway, well, the last question I will ask. I just wanted to get your perspective, Peter, on what's happened up at the Stadium of Light. I wanted to sort of get your perspective. I mean, I know you probably won't have looked at the Championship too much, but obviously you'll know we had a horrendous season last year, got relegated with pretty much no fight. But I just want to see what you thought about the situation at Sunderland, because you'll probably, if anyone's watched the previous podcast, me, Ben, and one of our friends, Peter, basically just keep moaning about it every week. So, what would you say your perspective is on Sunderland at the moment?
Yeah, obviously, I do know a little bit about the Championship because I do a little bit of scouting for the academy at Preston North End. So I know a little bit about your manager, Simon Grayson. To be honest with you, I was very surprised that Grayson left Preston to go to Sunderland. No disrespect. Obviously, Sunderland is a bigger club and things like that. But obviously, they'd just been relegated from the Premier League. They'd lost Defoe. They'd lost a couple of other players. And for me, Simon Grayson took a struggling Preston team into near enough to playoff positions and expected to go a bit further in the Championship this season. So I was a little bit surprised to see Grayson go, but obviously that's a footballing decision. It's not money orientated or anything like that. Obviously Sunderland is the bigger club than Preston North End, and there's probably more money to spend. I don't know about
that. Sorry to interrupt.
They probably have more money than Preston anyway. But yeah, obviously the stadium, the facilities is going to be a lot more. A lot better than what he's used to at Preston. So it's basically a Premier League club, isn't it? Sunderland that's being relegated. So I just think I'm not too sure on the transfer business of Sunderland. I think they struggled to make a start in the Championship, haven't they? But I expect Grayson to steady the ship. It's whether the fans and the board and the owners and what have you are prepared to give him that little bit of time. But he's a very good manager, Grayson, and he's prepared to give all the young lads a chance, which he's done at Preston. There's a lot of youth came through there. So if they give him a little bit of time, I expect Simon Grayson to do a very good job at Sunderland. But like I say, he's got to be given that time.
What
would you assess on that, Ben? Anything you want to add on?
Yeah, it's a game of patience with Simon Grayson. Like Peter said, flooding the youngsters through. That's been shown in the first few games with Honeyman and Gooch coming on. So just Peter's hit the nail on the head, really.
Pretty much.
From an outside perspective, yeah. But yeah, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a long season, and if we can just steady the ship and steady the finances as well. This season's kind of a progress season. We're not going to go up. We're not going to go down. We're going to be like Villa were last season, really. Just trying to find our feet in a league that we have no experience in, really. The league's changed from when we were last in it 10 years ago. So yeah, it's just going to be a progressive season.
Yeah, I think I'd probably.
It's a very difficult league to get out of that Championship, isn't it? Obviously, there's more games, isn't there? There's more clubs, and obviously they're all fighting for that Premier League slot at the end of the season. So it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's very competitive, isn't it?
It definitely is, yeah.
Yeah, there's probably about 10, 12 clubs there who could all aim for that promotion at the end of the season.
Yeah, 10 years ago you could almost, hand-pick the teams that were going to be up there. Now it's really a lottery of who could be up there. Shown when Huddersfield came up last season, they were relegation candidates. There's always a one outlier now that get up there.
Well, hopefully that's us later in the season. I'm not expecting anything by any stretch. I think I said before, the failure to sign a striker was critical, but we've obviously not going to go into that. Right, look, thank you very much, Peter, for coming on. We need to have you on again at some point, actually. What we think is maybe doing every international break is maybe, if we can, do a podcast looking at the Premier League and then we can sort of assess how Liverpool's top of the league going into October, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm sure you hope so. But anyway, thank you very much, Peter, for coming on. Thanks for Ben again. And we will see you guys later. Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.